So I just did a podcast episode about noticing as a way into mindfulness and then how that ripples into everything else. Do you agree or no? The power of noticing.
I would say noticing is a mindful practice. It is mindfulness. So yeah, I agree.
Why didn't you just say yes? Is that too loud?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, listeners.
Yeah. No, I mean, noticing is mindfulness.
Yes.
Especially if you notice that you're noticing.
What are 3 things that you notice about me recently?
Recently?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Have you not been mindful in our relationship?
Well, you're asking me to notice 3 new things, correct?
Well, recently, last few months.
You have been very conscious of helping around the house. And I shouldn't say helping because it's not really helping when it's your house too, right? Like just doing your share, like I do my share. You have been very excited and driven and passionate about the book. And
what book is this?
This is our new book.
Yeah?
It's Not Me, It's You, releasing in the beginning of September and currently on pre-sale.
Oh, we just lost all our followers. We just lost all our listeners. Yep. Okay. Of course, I'm passionate about it. I mean, you are as well.
Yeah. You're asking me if I'm noticing about you. You have been enjoying watering the grass.
Okay. What are 3 things that I've noticed about you? I think one is being more patient with Logan, and when your fight or flight is activated by her screaming or too much going on, I think I notice you're able to manage that more or better.
It's funny that you say that because I would feel like it's the opposite.
You think it's worse?
I feel like it's been the opposite, yeah. But that's interesting that you're noticing that about me.
Yeah. I'm noticing that you are making more of an effort to get your social time in.
Yes, I've made a conscious effort of that.
You're naked, you said?
No, I said yes. Sorry. I've made a conscious effort of that. Wow, what is that Freudian slip?
Anything that sounds like naked, I perk up.
Exactly.
And then the third thing I notice is that. Well, I don't know if this is you. I was gonna say I noticed that you're good for me. Like who you are, the way you are, is medicine for me, who I am and the way I am. You know.
I like that.
So that's more like me noticing about us.
Mm-hmm. In what ways?
It's me. You ground me. When I'm scrambling or I'm way up in the sky, kind of pulling me back down. Not in a way that is stunting my growth potential, but in a way that grounds me, makes me feel like I'm not all over the place, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about
healthy communication.
Yeah, vomiting versus not speaking at all. Yeah, so vomiting is more on my side. I have a pattern of saying everything. I feel like we should be completely transparent, or this is how I felt before, and that nothing should be hidden. Every thought you should tell your partner, and that's what love looks like. And I realized over the years that that's not what love looks like. There's actually an immaturity to that, and there's a responsibility on what you choose to disclose and not. And what we want to talk about in this episode is, like, how do you know? How do you know what to disclose? How do you know not to disclose? Now, Vanessa is on the other side of that spectrum where it's hard for her to express your feelings, your state.
Everything.
Yeah.
In an intimate relationship, yeah.
And this is really important also with us. This has also been kind of one of the struggles, I would say, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything that we talk about in relationships. I find it to be more often than not that people who find themselves on the opposite ends of all of these different spectrums find each other in relationship, right? I choose to believe that part of that is because unconsciously we are searching for the other extreme to help us learn, right? To help us balance, to help us find center. And it's really hard to do that without that mirror. So I do my best as like a daily practice to lean into the differences that we have, this just being one of them, as exactly that, right? As a mirror, as a lesson.
So is your pattern in relationships that you don't say anything?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation. I went to dinner with a couple girlfriends the other night.
And also, real quick, tell us after your story what the result of that was in relationship, right?
Of my pattern?
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation with my friends a couple nights ago. We went to dinner like 2 nights ago, and we were talking about, so one of my best friend that many listeners probably have heard of or know, our friend Danae, also a therapist. Mm-hmm. And Danae and I talk often about how I don't love working with couples.
Right. It activates you.
Because I'm very conflict averse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm not a good couples therapist. I just don't know that I enjoy it because I'm so conflict averse, right? So it activates me. It spirals me. I recently was working with a really high conflict couple, and after every session I was crying, like releasing energy. I mean, it's hard. And so
would you say also because you fall under the umbrella of an empath?
Yes, but I think they're correlated. So I think my struggle with conflict is connected to having like high empathic abilities.
Well, the imprint on you is always deeper with sessions than me. It's not that I don't care about people. Obviously, I care about people. I want them to do well. But I have more of an ability that is, I think, wired where I don't take it home.
So Danae's the same way.
Yeah, and so I could see a couple. I enjoy couples. I could see a couple, throwing chairs at each other, and I would just, eat popcorn. Like they don't suck me into.
And Danae's the same way.
And so,
it's just fascinating to me because you and Danae are very similar, and it's not surprising to me that it's like my best friend and my partner.
Yeah, so I watched the movie. You get sucked into the riptide.
Well, and it's funny that you say movies. So what we were talking about at dinner is I was like, we were talking about just what conflict does to me in general. And I was saying that I was like using an example that happened when we were in grad school. There was a guy that we went to grad school with who was he was an angry white guy. Mm-hmm. And he was just on a rampage constantly. Like he was always the victim. He was starting fights with every teacher, everybody in the class, whatever. Clearly you can tell by my voice that he activated the shit out of me. And there was a time in a class, well, there was a million times, but one time in particular that he kind of went in with one of our professors, and they were like openly fighting in the room. And I remember just like wanting to physically crawl under the table, right?
Because they were fighting in front of you.
Because they were fighting. Right. And I'm not like exaggerating when I say my go-to response is I want to crawl under the fucking table, right? I hate it so much. It shuts me down. I start to dissociate. I get flooded. I want to cry. I want to run. I don't feel safe. I feel panicky.
But doesn't that smell familiar? And shouldn't you be comfortable with that because you grew up with a lot of, fighting, conflict, chaos?
But I think I'm uncomfortable with it because I grew up in it. So
it repels you.
Yeah, I never learned healthy fighting skills. I was in a house with a very loud parent who... like they were the only ones who there was room for big emotions, right? And so I felt I got shut down a lot in response to their big emotions, right? Like there's not room for both of us kind of thing. And it just felt very unsafe. So whenever there was conflict, there was always some kind of emotional fallout. And this pattern followed me into friendships and early relationships, right? Like there was always payback. It was always part of me not speaking up. And this is a long way to get into this, what we're talking about. Part of me being really bad at speaking up and communicating in relationships, things that there is a potential for conflict around, which is how I view everything, by the way, is I'm always controlling and managing and manipulating the situation to protect against any potential conflict.
So you're trying to always keep things calm.
Yes, the whole not rock the boat, right? Because I learned that rocking the boat had emotional consequences, whether that was the cold shoulder, which especially growing up, that just makes you feel like the love is being taken away, like you are not lovable, period, hard stop. or whether that was just outright somebody being angry, you know, but whether that's words, name calling, whatever, you name it. And so, yeah, I mean, I think some people could grow up in a chaotic household and actually be really good in chaos. I find myself being the opposite. I grew up in that kind of chaotic emotional environment, and I developed the serious need to control and minimize conflict at all costs.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up with a father who, and I think this is because he was an alcoholic, he was immature emotionally, and so he didn't have that emotional speed bump. So he would express every feeling that he had. But when things were good, it was great because he would say, you know, I love you and you're mate, you know, like he would be very, you know, lovey-dovey. But then also when things were bad, he took us hostage emotionally, right? And so...
Isn't that funny? We have that's very similar, the way that you just described it to my upbringing too.
Yeah. And so, but how that manifested in me is... and maybe I don't know how much of it is, you know, nurture or nature, but I grew up expressing myself constantly in relationships.
Which you just said he did.
Which he did. But, you know, my brother was raised under the same roof with the same parents, and he has struggles with expressing himself or tapping into his emotions. That's always been really easy for me. So I thought in relationships, because I got a lot of praise for it, that I had this natural gift, or it was a tool that I could be quote unquote sensitive, or the guy that is lovey-dovey, or, you know, talking about my feelings, and also, you know, you're beautiful, and I think you're sexy, and whatever it is, right? So I always thought that was a plus. It wasn't until later I realized that saying everything you feel isn't necessarily a plus. And there were things that I disclosed in my marriage that I did before I even met her that I shouldn't have, and because I did disclose that was the first domino in the whole collapse of that marriage, right? So,
which I hate that story for you, because that makes me so angry at your ex. Well, whatever, she was young and
we were both young.
Emotionally immature, but that to me, I don't like people hearing that story without the context around that. Does not mean that you don't speak up about your past in order to not have somebody judge you a certain way, because I have very strong feelings about how my ex was completely incapable of hearing anything about my romantic or sexual past, and that made me feel so shut down and like I was only lovable if I fit into a certain mold of how he wanted to see me.
Here's the argument. We'll get back to our topic because we could be easily birdwalking, because we could talk about this as a whole nother episode, but the argument is, if you told me that information before you asked me to marry you, my decision would encompass your whole story, who you were before you met me.
I don't like that. Yeah.
And I disagree. I think that one could argue. Okay, so let's say I murdered someone, right? Shouldn't
sure,
you know?
I would want to know that.
Right. But if we're just talking about sexual history and other stuff, I think anything that happened before you met the person, it shouldn't be significant.
I agree.
But
you don't have to share it.
For most people, it is significant. For most people, they judge you on it. And they say, if you did that, then that might be foreshadowing. And you should have told me, because now I'm scared you're going to do that again or whatever. So
part of me feels like it's your story and your story to own, and you get to tell somebody what you want to tell them.
I agree.
That to me doesn't feel like that to me, and I know you and I have had this conversation a couple times. I actually feel like that story is not the same as what we would call verbal vomiting. That to me feels a little bit like, yes, you chose to disclose something about your past, and everybody has the right to either disclose or not disclose, and she wasn't capable of hearing that, which I imagine at the time for you felt really fucking awful.
Well, of course, because there was also a lot of shame.
Right, very shaming.
Right.
You don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about how much I should disclose, but yeah, and so and that was also a spiritual experience where I felt because I got married and because she was Christian and this was a God thing. I kind of felt like, and maybe it did happen. I don't know, because the divorce was also the first domino in my whole rebirth and what I'm doing now. So I felt that God was telling me to come clean with my quote unquote sins. And that's why I told her. It wasn't, but I don't know if it was really God or if it was my own personal guilty conscience. But that's why I told her, and then me telling her was the reason why the floor broke. That was the first giant piece of information that cracked the relationship. And then I learned later, a lot of my guy friends was like, "You're such an idiot. Why would you ever tell anyone, old stories of, you having whatever sex with other people or like, that was like stupid of you." And then I realized, I thought I was being a good fiance. I thought I was being a good boyfriend. I thought I was by being, that open. I thought then it meant like, I really trust this guy, but it completely backfired on me.
It was a lesson for you in discernment is what it was, right? It was a lesson for you in your story is your story, and you should hold parts of it close to you, and at the same time, share things with the people that you love and that love you, and hopefully not get shamed for it.
Well, with you, I don't think there's anything that I could say about myself. I mean, unless I did kill someone, that would be a fact. But
I guess it depends on the why.
Besides besides murder, and really dark things like being a pedophile or something.
Right.
I don't think there's anything I could say to you where you would judge me, because I think that your view of me starts when we met till now. So whatever my character is. Whatever that, whether I hold up or not, or my inconsistency, all of that stuff, that starts from when we met till now, not something that happened in college or
Yeah, well,
and also the same for you, like
and
I'll be honest, I could handle it now, but I don't think, and I know you've had many exes who couldn't handle it. I don't think that in my 20s or even 30s. You telling me about your wild nights or your sexcapades or whatever, I don't think that I would be able to handle it. I think I would be judgmental.
Well, and I want to clarify, I have only had one ex that couldn't handle it, because my ex, when I was in my 20s, we were so open about everything with each other, and there was so little judgment in that relationship that I actually just thought that that's what love looked like, which it kind of does.
Well, but that's also probably your youngest. You guys were so young.
Yeah, but I mean, we still had experiences before each other.
Right.
I mean, we dated like 18 to, 22 or something like that, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And we were the kind of partners that would go out together, and I would like draw his attention to like the beautiful girl that just walked in the bar and be like, "Oh my God, like this woman is stunning. Like, look, like tell me about that night. Oh, that's really interesting." I don't know. Regardless, it was one person. And I have a very strong reaction to that now on the other side of that experience, because I know how that experience made me feel. And it really made me feel that the love was conditional. And in a lot of ways, that was how I felt growing up. And I now know in hindsight that there was a trifecta of people in my life from growing up until my 20s that did have that same vibe, right? Like the love was conditional. And now I realize that the people that are close in my life are the exact opposite of that the love does not feel conditional. And I've obviously been, I think, more conscious than I even realized in pulling people into my sphere that are like that. But this all goes back to when we first started dating. We had a conversation around what we dubbed responsible communication, because I remember saying to you, I don't remember what it was, whether it was a conflict or something, but I do remember us having a conversation where I said to you something along the lines of like, I don't need to know everything that's going on for you and in your life and in your head. Now, not like your past stories, but more like in the moment with us, things that you were stressed out about, whatever. And I remember saying to you, basically, you sharing with me every single detail of what you're working out in your head in the midst of working it out is actually, I felt, more damaging, because it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible,
because
right?
It's
like
me
you were
dumping
putting
on
it
you.
on me.
Right.
So now you walk away from the conversation feeling lighter, wiping your hands, feeling a little clean and clear, and I'm left now holding the anxiety and holding the stress.
Sure.
And so that was the conversation that led us into you saying, okay, if you're on the one side of the spectrum, that's the verbal vomiter, what would it look like for you to actually sit with, be more discerning of what it is that you think you need to share, and actually put some thought into, okay, this is actually for me to self-soothe. This
Right.
actually is for me to sort out on my own. And then this is the component that I actually bring to my partner and discuss.
Knowing the difference.
And then I was on the opposite.
So
side
knowing
of
that, yeah. So knowing, by the way, and so these days I don't say anything. I just pout and slam doors.
You
Which
do
is,
still pout sometimes.
I do, sure.
Yeah. Which is hard for me because that's kind of how I grew up. But
Change is hard.
I know it's hard. Do you want me to call it out when you do it, or should I continue?
You do. You called it out.
Do I?
You say, "Are you okay?" Or what do you know?
By the time I
don't
say,
think-
"Are you okay?" I'm mad and resentful though.
Right, but
should probably
I
get better at saying it before
I
that.
don't feel like I'm pouting. I feel like I'm being reflective. I'm thinking. I'm fighting with myself.
Yeah.
I'm processing. It might come off as pouting, but I'm not like slamming doors and giving you the silent treatment. I just might not be skipping, and my energy might be different. But that's because I'm thinking about stuff. It's not because it's me trying to be responsible, and it may come off as, oh, he's pouting again, but that's actually not what's happening.
So my request to you, I guess, in that conversation, this is interesting that we're recording right now because we haven't talked about this. My request is, as you continue to work on this, and I'm working on my own stuff, obviously, which we'll talk about in a second, you've gotten better, to your point, of the pouting. My request to you, to push you a little further, would be to tell me, I'm working through something. I'm in my head. I realize I'm in my head. I'm working through something. I'll talk to you about it when I kind of know what it is I want to talk to you about.
What?
Versus
Okay.
energy changing and shifting, and then
Sure.
it feeling like I'm the one that needs to go, are you okay? Which makes me feel like it's on me or my responsibility to manage your emotions. Which is not necessarily true, but that's like my MO, right?
In our book, we talk a lot about finding beauty in the contrast,
Mm-hmm.
right? And our differences. And a lot of me going inward is actually me convincing myself that our differences are okay. And I'm saying this because it's a process, there's no solution. It's me telling myself there's no solution and bringing this up or talking about it, because you shouldn't try to change Vanessa anyway. So
Right.
So it's not like someone did anything wrong. It's more about me doing what I can to accept who you are, how you are, what you like, what you don't like, all of that. And it's the if I sense any kind of mismatch and that's important to me, before it would be me trying to convince you to change or do that, or trying to put you in some kind of mold you in some way. And so these days I'm trying to be more accepting.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think I respect all the reasons why you're doing it. I think what I'm asking for is, let's not pretend like I can't tell.
yes,
Because clearly I can. I'm empathic as fuck.
but what do I say if it doesn't, a conversation isn't going to solve it? So what do I say?
Conversation doesn't need to solve it. You just need to acknowledge that your energy is different, instead of leaving me clearly knowing that the energy is different, but you're not saying anything, which then that triggers my codependency into being like, what happened? What did I do? What's wrong? What do I need to fix? How do I need to solve this? That's where I go with it. And then by the time I say to you, what's wrong? My what's wrong, let me be very clear, is not coming from an empathetic place. My what's wrong is coming from I'm fucking mad and resentful now because you're walking around holding this, your energy has changed, and you haven't said anything to me about it. So it tends to be a little bit of a snowball, whereas I almost feel like if you were like, I'm working through something, just so you know, I know that I'm being whatever, like weird. Just know it's not, don't worry, like we're not in a fight or whatever that looks like. Does that make sense?
So one of the things, one of the splinters, I guess, in our past is this whole thing of me, because we speak different love languages, and we have different ways that we give and receive love, different sexual appetites, all that stuff. Me saying that I don't feel desired. So if I one day feel like I don't feel desired, before I would say, I don't feel desired. What can you do to make me feel desired? All that kind of stuff. Today, I try to pause for a second and ask myself, okay, you feel that way. How much of that is you?
Mm-hmm.
What can you be responsible for?
Mm-hmm.
And don't try to give Vanessa a prescription,
Mm-hmm.
or can you do this, or can we go have sex, or can we, or put pressure on you in any
Mm-hmm.
way. And so in that moment where I'm fighting with me, it's it's when the Incredible Hulk doesn't want to turn green, and he's trying to calm down, and because then once he turns green, it's too late, right? And so, I think that's when you feel me disconnecting or getting very quiet or pouty, and it's me fighting with myself, because a part of me is like, well, I have a right to feel desired, and she needs to do this and this and that, and then the other part of me, a bigger part of me, or more mature part of me, is like, well, if you don't feel desired, how much of that is coming from, your
internal
source,
yeah.
Past stuff, you feeling needed, or because of how much of that is your responsibility?
Yeah.
Whether that equals masturbation or just you calming down or doing something else or accepting, and how much of that is...
Or doing something that fills you up, right? Like, that doesn't have anything to do with sex.
Yeah, that's nothing to do with sex,
yeah.
Sure. Or how much of that is Vanessa's job, right? Or something that you are putting pressure on. And so me dissecting that can get me to get very, very quiet. And so I don't know, do I say to you, hey, I'm, I don't want to turn green, so I'm
sure, maybe
this is
I'm
what
in my head
thinking
about something.
Sure, but if you said I'm in my head about something, I would want to know more, because to me that keeps me on the...
Yeah, I could say I'm in my head about something. I need a little time to work it out, and I'll come to you when I'm ready to talk about it, right? Because that shows that I'm aware that I'm in my head about something, but I'm doing my work to sort out exactly what you were saying, what's mine, and then what do I need to discuss with you. And then just saying to you, trust me, I'll come to you when I'm ready, which puts you at ease, which doesn't make you feel like you need to swoop in and say, what's wrong, and try to fix it, which is usually where I go. Again, my codependency gets activated, and I think I need to fix it and sort it out and solve it, which then makes me resentful because I know that it's not my job to solve it, even, you know what I'm saying? So it just turns into this whole fucking snowball.
Yeah. Can you read something from the book?
Yes.
I'll
read my part, because we didn't talk too much about the whole not communicating piece. I
think the other point here, the secondary point here, is not what we're saying, but where we're at. Meaning, Vanessa and I have been together for 4 years, and there are still stuff that we are both individually and as a couple working on, and
we'll forever be working on.
Yeah, that's just the ebb and flow of a relationship. And so what we're talking about now is one thing, right? But this is what this is
what relationshiping looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read from page 143 in the chapter that we're speaking from. So I say, almost everything we do in relationships, including communication, can be taken to one of two extremes. One extreme is what John is referring to, word vomit, i.e. over-communicating. The other extreme is not communicating at all. I tend toward this side of the spectrum. I'm a great talker. I can talk to a brick wall, and the conversation will be riveting, I assure you. I'm also a great communicator at work. I can work through problems, clearly articulate needs and potential solutions, but throw me into something vulnerable, and I am a master at sweeping it all under the rug in order to not rock the boat, right? In the beginning, I remember saying to John, we don't need to talk about everything. And he also used to constantly ask me what was wrong, because he sensed and was usually correct that I wasn't speaking up about something. His spidey senses developed in his previous relationships were helping him here. I would usually say nothing, even if it was something, which is not fair to either party. I wasn't allowing him to grow and trust the relationship, and I wasn't pushing myself to grow by practicing speaking up. I was annoyed when he would ask me if everything was okay, but how could I have expected him to not constantly be digging and trying to share and communicate everything when he was always sensing that I wasn't honestly communicating the important stuff? That's crazy making. Through practice, we can figure out what the communication middle ground is, the point between the two extremes. It does not come naturally for me to speak up, avoiding conflict, not being clear and direct about my upsets or needs, downplaying what I'm feeling as not being worth speaking up over, feeling needy for having needs. These are my default beliefs that have become the basis for my communication strategies. Not surprising, they do not work, period. I've had enough relationships, both romantic and friend, and partly because of my inability to communicate, to know that my way is most certainly not the right way. Let's ask ourselves some hard questions to see how we can work to find the middle ground between our extremes, what John and I call responsible communication.
Yeah.
You want to end with some questions?
Sure. Questions to ask yourself. And this is really important because it gets you to think and chew on. Are you someone who tends to share easily, maybe a little too easily, like me? What's going through your mind? If so, try to asking yourself, what you might need to take responsibility. What you might need to take responsibility for. What is yours to investigate, to own, to sit with, and not place on your relationship? Are you using your partner to soothe your own anxiety rather than to build the skills to self-soothe? What is your hope in sharing the things you share?
That is a good one.
Yeah. What is your hope? What's your
hope in sharing the things that you want to share?
Yeah,
right. Ask yourself that question.
Is it to change the other person? Is it to be understood and accepted fully? To offload some of your heavier, anxious feelings onto the other person so you can feel better, a little better about yourself. And this is also why seeing a therapist is so important. Mm-hmm. Is so if you do need to offload, yes, of course you could do it on with your friends. I have no friends, but Vanessa has friends. Or you can have a therapist, so instead of vomiting on your partner, you can process and unload on your therapist. And I guarantee you, after that session, as long as you are doing the work and being authentic and courageous in doing that, you will leave so light and you won't have the need to come home and unload it on your partner. If you do, that unload will be minimal because you just did it with your therapist and you had a lot of revelations in the process.
Yes, and I want to clarify here, and this could be a whole other podcast, the purpose of therapy is not just to vent.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Of course, but
venting has to be proactive in therapy. If you're coming in to bitch about somebody at work or this thing, whatever that happened, as long as you are prepared for the therapist to stop you, and they should, poke holes in what you're saying, turn the mirror around on you, get you to be, inward thinking, all these things. I do think a lot of people, and I've had this question a lot of people come to me thinking that therapy tends to just be a dumping session, and that's not helpful.
That's up to...
Also, I could take your money forever if that's what you want to do, but that's not me helping you.
That's up to the therapist. It's the therapist's job to challenge you and let you know that it's not just about venting. Job. But that being said, in the beginning, and if you've never seen a therapist and you've never expressed yourself, the first few months of your sessions may just be all venting, and that's okay.
We disagree.
People go at different. It depends on what you need
speeds.
from your therapist. And if you just need to vent, I think that is totally okay. It just can't be forever.
Or all the time, yeah. Or are you someone who struggles to communicate? If so, start by asking yourself why you shut down or make a decision not to share. What are you afraid of? Be honest with yourself. Why do you feel like you can't trust the other person with your true feelings? Are you choosing to stay in a relationship lined with resentment, one in which you're not heard or seen, rather than risk an upset or being left by your partner? Does that feel fulfilling to you? And then just bottom line, are you resentful at all? Question your resentments.
You can get our book right now for pre-order. It's not me, it's you. It's Blue, John Kim and Vanessa Bennett on Amazon. Thank you for listening. Be well.